welcome. You're watching Purple Bee TV. We're a creative studio delivering immersive live experiences and creating timeless artifacts, all celebrating the magic of the moment. And tonight is no exception. Purple Bee presents a special live stream edition of How Did I Get Here with Johnny Goudie. Tonight's episode 1501, featuring an interview with Waterloo Records co-owners Caren Kelleher, Trey Watson, and John T Kunz. And now here's your host, Johnny Goudie.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 1501, our very first video and live stream episode ever. So presented to you by Purple Bee. We're here in the lovely studios in Valenti, Texas. And today, for our very first video episode and live stream, we are going to be talking to the new owners and current and former owners of Waterloo Records. Waterloo has been a hub for musicians and music fans for over 40 years. And in that time, it's made some moves, and it's only had one owner, John Kunz. And it's time to, well, early on there was a couple, but for most of the time it was John Kunz. Sorry about that. Now John is passing on the torch, and he found two very able-bodied people that see the future of Waterloo Records while retaining its integrity. That's Caren Kelleher, CEO of Gold Rush Vinyl, and Trey Watson, the president, CEO of Armadillo Records, and Austin entrepreneur. Sure. Welcome to the show, you guys, and congratulations. Waterloo has been a very favorite place of mine. I very first started going there in about 1991 to the location that is still there. When do we have a date for when it's actually gonna, the new one's gonna open up at 1105 North Lamar? August. Okay, well, sometime in August. My first times there were in 1991. I got to have a record release in store there, had a window cling there, which is something that if you're a musician in Austin, means the world to you because all your friends take pictures of them and call you up and go, oh man, I saw your window cling, you're cool. So that's always very exciting and an honor to be part of that establishment. So welcome, John, welcome, Caren, and welcome, Trey.
Thanks, Johnny.
Yeah. Well, first of all, John, we're going to talk to you. Waterloo started in 1982 with Louis Karp.
Right. Louis started it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And for 3 to 6 months, he was the sole owner.
He was the sole owner. So then you came in.
Right, and we became 50-50 partners.
Now, what made you, like, what were you doing before you became 50-50 partners of Waterloo?
So I started out working at a record store in Highland Mall part-time when I was a student at UT.
Okay.
And then became the manager of that store. And then became the manager of a more college-centric record store called Zebra Records that was a couple of blocks south of UT. And then we opened up we opened up another Zebra Records in Austin, and then I was over the 3 stores that we had here in Austin. And then a couple of years later, my boss, who was over 13 stores throughout Texas, resigned and suggested I take his job. So I was doing 13 stores all over Texas.
Wow.
And then that company sold to another company, Hastings Records.
Yeah.
And they did things a little differently than we did, a lot differently, and it wasn't really my thing anymore. And I'd been thinking about opening up my own store. And I resigned from Hastings Records on the day Louis opened up Waterloo. And I had already signed a lease to open up my own store. And we started talking as the two. He had been the manager of Sound Warehouse in Austin, and we were like the two big competitors of national chain stores.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, we started talking as we're going to be cooperative competitors, just like we were when we did chain stores, but we know how formidable our previous employers are, so we're going to need all the help we can get. And the more we talked, the more we decided that we didn't have enough time, money, connections, inventory, energy, so we partnered up. And it was a great partnership, and we're still great friends to this day. And for a few years, he even let me one of his sons to be one of my great employees.
Oh, that's great.
Yep.
It's funny. I know Louis from the early 90s when he managed David Garza and the Love Beats.
Right.
That's when I first started doing shows with David, was how I got to meet him. And then I remember he ended up being a manager at Whole Foods, where I worked at Brody Oaks.
Right.
Right after that. But I haven't seen him since. He's a lovely guy, though.
He ended up working for decades with Whole Foods and just retired a couple of years ago in Colorado.
Great. So, John, you talk about these chain stores and where you started. Like, did you think that Waterloo, you probably wanted it to, but did you think Waterloo would outlast Hastings and Sound Warehouse?
I didn't really foresee like 90% of the places that sold music going away
That's
when
true.
digital came
I'm not
along.
trying to celebrate it, but the fact that
Right,
you've been
right.
able to stay alive is a huge accomplishment.
But I always had faith and confidence that we could continue on. Other people, it's up to them. But it's kind of amazing when, things come along that, like, right around the turn of the century, Napster, and that turned things on its edge. And iTunes was another game changer. And COVID, of course, and now it's tariffs, and it's just kind of crazy stuff goes on in the world, and you just have to be nimble and kind of have the binoculars into the future about where things are going to go and what you're going to do and how you're going to manipulate and kind of continue to innovate to where you do remain relevant and thriving. But the thing that always works is that it's all about the music. Our motto's always been where music still matters, and there were so many places that they were music stores, but it was kind of like secondary. And as long as the music's foremost, I think that's going to carry any halfway run business through.
Yeah.
And if it's a well-run business, then, maybe you get to stick around for 43 years.
Yeah. So let's figure out how you guys are all connected like this. I read a lot of your story and listened to it, and we met before when I worked with Austin Music Foundation, and we got to tour your amazing facility, Gold Rush Vinyl. So you said when you moved to town, you met John. Please let us know, Caren, how that worked out.
Well, I started coming to Austin in, 2005 for Austin City Limits, and was working at Paste Magazine, and Waterloo was obviously on our radar. And my very first trip there, it was just like, this place is special. I bought a keychain at Waterloo and carried it on my key ring for years that said Austin, and people would say, do you have family there? Or like, why are you so sentimentally connected? But just felt like there was something very special at that corner at 6th and Lamar. And I would tell people that's my favorite intersection in all of America. And so when I started thinking about where I was going to start Gold Rush Vinyl, a lot of people encouraged me to think about Austin and how open it was to music entrepreneurship. So when I moved to town, connected with John for the first time, but had obviously had memories at Waterloo over the years, and felt very confident in, if I'm going to build this business, especially a vinyl record pressing plant, to have Waterloo be the retail flagpole that it was for the industry, meant that my business would probably succeed too, because Waterloo had such success.
Right. Real quickly, before you moved here and started Gold Rush, you were working at Google Music?
I was on the launch team for Google Music, which then became Google Play, and had been recruited to help launch the platform's indie music tools. So Google was the very first major digital streaming platform, DSP, that had let musicians go direct to fans without a middleman. You didn't need a record label, you didn't need an aggregator or a distributor, you could just upload your own music there. And I was brought to help build those tools. Simultaneously, I had been pro bono managing musicians on the side, and had started to see the realities of the royalty statements they were getting from digital, and the realities of being at a concert venue and selling merch to a fan. And John's talking about binoculars and seeing the future. When you see an artist selling, a vinyl record to a fan, and the connection there, it's like there's something happening with vinyl, and it led me to Austin.
Yeah, that's wild. What was, like, you got an MBA from Harvard, and was music your trajectory? Because there was something I think I read that you were abnormal
They,
graduate
they
student?
called me not I think it was like a thinly veiled insult. They were like, "You're a non-traditional
Non-traditional,
student."
sorry, that's
they
what
kept
I was looking
saying
for.
that. They're like, "You're a non-traditional student." And it's like, "Ugh, but you guys let me in here." So yeah, I went to school thinking, okay, and partly, if I'm honest with you, in the early 2000s when I was in the music industry, when I looked ahead and thought about when I'm 40, can I have a career here? There were no women in the music industry in leadership roles. I could not find anybody that demonstrated a blueprint for what my life could look like. So I partly went back to school thinking, okay, I had fun in the music industry. It's time to get a real job, you know? And thank goodness the recession happened the year that I went to school. 2008, the markets crashed. So all the quote unquote safe jobs, finance, consulting, went away for people like me that were not of that background.
Right.
And what I learned in that time was how special it was to be in a vocation that people are like, wow, you're passionate about that and you love it. And also realizing at the same time, as much as Napster had changed the landscape and iTunes was coming into the market, music is a what I call recession-proof industry. People are always going to want to consume music. It's just the way that we, you know, buy it, experience it is changing. And I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll just double down on music instead. And ended up being, the weird non-traditional MBA student that did music. Only two of my 900 classmates had worked in the music industry. So, but from that, lots of opportunities.
And
came
you
to me.
wanted to be in music, like you
Oh,
wanted
always.
to have connected with
since
it.
I was a child.
What was your first sort of like super music connection where you were like, I want to be part of that?
Well, I joke, I loved the 80s TV show Gem and the Holograms, which
Oh,
was
yeah.
about a woman who becomes a rock star because of AI. Her dad left her this synergy machine, and I just loved the business of music, and then really it got into the Beatles during the Beatles anthology season, and specifically the business of the Beatles. How is it that they negotiated their rights back? Were so prolific in that time. I mean, if you look at
Oh, yeah.
from 1963 to 70, how many records they put out and how many times they reinvented themselves. Now record labels are like, whoa, put your foot on the brake. Like
Yeah.
one record every 3 years is fine. We got to stretch
Right.
this out. And so I started to really think, wow, I don't have talent for music, but I want to be in that. I want to be creating music, and I just have followed that ever since.
Right. And this brings in our friend Trey. You are an investor in Gold Rush, right?
Correct.
How did you two meet real fast, you and Caren?
I was having lunch with a friend, as I do occasionally in my previous life, a guy named Bill Stapleton, who a lot of people in Austin probably have crossed paths with, and he just mentioned off cuff of some of the deals I was doing at the time that I needed to meet this girl, Caren Kelleher. I don't know how y'all met, but, you know, just like anybody at the time in the networking world that I lived in, I never turned really a meeting down, so I took it upon Bill to introduce us, and we met, and just like a lot of things that I run into, created a relationship, and then found an opportunity that she needed someone like me to help, whether it was being an investor or finding other partners, and just, you know, I kind of rolled my sleeves up and loved what she had built, and it was unique and super fulfilling for me, you know, that was different than the life that I had, the business life that I had lived before that. So that's how that started.
Excellent. So you come from, your dad was in insurance,
Yes.
and then you moved to Austin from San Antonio to sell insurance?
Yeah. As exciting
There's
and
nothing
fun
wrong
as
with
that
that.
sounds. Yeah, no, exactly. It basically turned into a situation where I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grow up.
Right.
And I think at, 45 years old, I figured that out. My father was a life insurance agent, and just by default, I really appreciated the lifestyle that he lived. He was always present, set his own hours, was my coach in all sports growing up, didn't travel. So as I was crossing over from, being a young adult into being a professional, I realized that's what I want to do. I don't know exactly what that is, but I want to do that. And that's the culture that I want. And in picking that, my father was like, well, I don't know how to train you or do anything for you, so you're going to have to figure it out on your own. So you might want to go somewhere that you can figure out real fundamental basics and how to sell. So I said, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to Austin, Texas. Because in 1998, everybody was coming to Austin just like they still are today. So
Right.
I figured a way to do it and made it work. And, 25 years in insurance, still have a practice that exists, but definitely spend way less time working in that world than in this world.
And your first foray into the music business was Armadillo Records? Kind of?
Well, it backs up a step. Really, my first foray out of insurance was really it was content and media. And I was an investor in a company that is now called Globe Photos.
Okay.
It was a photography archive that was a roll-up, and they were buying archives and archives. And so in seeing how content was starting in media, medium was becoming such a big part of business, when you take that kind of art, photography, music, film, all those things kind of spoke to me. So really my first introduction was that, but then from there is how Bill introduced me to other people kind of in the same genres, and that's how Caren and I met. So really it was Gold Rush, which was music, and then Armadillo Records came after that, and then Waterloo came after that. So it's kind of a, climbing the rungs of the ladder to get to not the top as far as, success, but just completing a puzzle of pieces that just fit and make sense to all of the, goals and objectives that we're trying to, pull off.
Yeah. There was a thing that I read that what your part of the team is you can explain things really well to people. Is that in one of the articles I read, maybe in the Chronicle or something? That was very good, though.
It's funny. I don't know music. My parents and a lot of my generation ahead of me loved music. My kids love music, but music skipped over me. To quote Will Hunting, I look at a piano and I see 88 keys in a box of wood. But I do know business. And I think in sales, as long as I've been in it, you really have to learn how to communicate what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And I think you're right. I think that's kind of the biggest thing that I can do is deal with people and explain things in a way that they understand me, but also what I'm trying to explain to them.
Right. So did you have any connection to music? Like, what were your favorite bands growing up? Did you go to concerts? Did you go see live music here when you moved here?
I did, yeah. My first live music experience was the San Antonio Rodeo at Joe and Harry Freeman Coliseum.
Oh, nice.
And it was all country music. It was San Antonio, and it was up front, close, right in the dirt. And so that was kind of really the first time I saw anything live. And then after that, Austin was Austin, and then you have a menu of every night of whatever you want to pick from in whatever kind of a venue, and that was a big transition to eye-opening to see a town like this kind of being your first stop professionally, and didn't realize that all other cities weren't like this, until you go to another city, like, wait, there's no live music in the airport. I can't go to a restaurant and have, hear a band or whatever. So it becomes part of the culture, which I think people get addicted to when they do live here. And then they realize that it doesn't exist elsewhere, and it just brings them back.
It is very special. Yeah. And that's one of the things that you guys, with the new building, you're going to, from what I understand, there's going to be, I wrote it down so that I said it right. You'll be able to experience music from creation to being able to buy it. What does that mean? Are you allowed to talk about it?
We are now, yes.
Yay.
Yay.
Cat's out.
I know.
Because it was so
Good
ambiguous.
timing,
I was like, what are they talking about?
Well, one of the things that we took away from John's vision for Waterloo for so long has been to make it the town square for music. And when we talk about tourism and all these people that come to Austin, there isn't really a third place beyond venues to really experience music. And at Gold Rush, we have a lot of requests for tours, but it's an active factory. You can't do that often. And so some of the things we're putting into Waterloo 3.0 will include how music is made, how your records end up there, starting with lacquer cutting. Lacquer cutting is the first step in the process for making a vinyl record. It is cutting an enamel-coated disc that is eventually going to be pressed into the vinyl, and people will be able to watch that happening. Artists will be able to be there watching through the window as their record gets cut for the first time, and those kind of moments are very special. Some of the other activations we have, too, of the ways that we're involving creators across the store will provide what we think is the only experience like that in the country for a record or retail store.
We call it the behind the curtain, experience that everybody wants the backstage tour. And I feel like the things that really they had at their disposal from the music industry were things that just made sense to me to include, because that's what people like. This is the VIP tour. This is the backstage. This is the behind the curtain. And I think that the public, while the draw to Waterloo Records is music and buying vinyl or CDs or DVDs, to add these little vignettes of these things that people don't get to see, I think it's going to be a huge draw to a whole different sect of people that come to Austin or that live in Austin, and will see Waterloo in a multiple dimensional light rather than the singular analog store that it is. I think we get to elevate it into things that we all have access to create a super unique experience in a music town. So.
Yeah, imagine the stage that Waterloo's been so known for, and all of the amazing musicians that have come through there, now being able to be in that crowd as someone's performing on that stage, and that recording is being recorded and cut to a lacquer that's going to be made into a vinyl record, and you get to have it as a fan. Just things like that really
brilliant.
Make the experience so special. I love going to I live in walking distance to Waterloo on purpose because I just love going to the store. But when you see people really, especially in stores, engaging with the artists, and the artists so glad to give their time. William Beckman was there this weekend and stayed for hundreds of people to sign their records. It's commemorating those moments and also making it worthwhile for both the fans and the artists is something that we uniquely are able to do at the new Waterloo store.
Yeah. When did you, while we talk about these in-stores, when did you start doing the in-stores? When did that become a thing?
First in stores I was doing was back at Zebra Records on
Oh, really?
17th and Lavaca. Yeah.
Wow.
And Lewis was doing them at Sound Warehouse, before. So that was something that was on both of our, when we sat down and were, considering, well, we weren't considering partnership at the time. That wasn't really,
right.
It just kind of evolved the more we talked. But we both had our checklist of the things that we wanted to make a focal point of our store, and local music and in-store performances and so forth were tops on the list.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where the music maker gets to hang out with the music lovers and vice versa.
Yeah.
And it's it's beyond behind the curtain.
Yeah.
At that point,
Yeah.
But it was funny. At the very beginning, there were, especially because lots of stores around the country were doing in-stores, and sometimes it was just a signing, sometimes it was actually a live performance, and there was an awful lot of unplugged, a la MTV. But when we started doing it with local bands, that was kind of not something that other places were doing, because they thought that someone had to be, big and mighty and on the radio all over the place before you would want to have them come into your store and do it. But we took the approach that, hey, this is our town and we want to celebrate this. And it was kind of interesting to see the people that got it and the people that didn't, I mean, I remember one kid coming to, his friend's band's in-store, and I knew this kid, and he was, a typical slacker of the time, and all the guys in the band were working a couple of jobs so that they could buy the instruments to make the recording, to
right.
make the CD or make the cassette, whatever it was at the time. And this kid comes up, and it's like, he's there drinking our free beer and getting a free show, and then he goes and asks the guys for, put him on the guest list for that night, and I'm just like, hey, man, they're giving you all this stuff for free, and all you want to do is ask for more free stuff, We were
just talking about that outside.
It's just,
yeah.
Don't you want to be part of what is going to be going forward?
Right.
And the way to do that is to, show your appreciation.
Yeah. I love those in-stores, and I always have. Did you guys build a stage in the new one as well?
Maybe.
Absolutely.
Bigger, better. Just the space is bigger, so it allows for something a little more grand to perform on. Yeah, so we're maximizing every square inch of the 10,000 square feet that we have.
Excellent. John, do you want to go through? There have been some pretty amazing people that have played in stores there. Can you tell us some of the highlights for you?
That's a bunch. But, in this town, first and foremost, I have to say Willie Nelson. He's done 2 in-store performances there. And one of them was really, really particularly incredible because he was supposed to be opening the backyard out in Oak Hill that night. And it rained cats and dogs all day long. And we got the word that, the place was flooded or something, and they were going to postpone the show. And Willie calls me aside and says, we can't do the show there. Is it okay if we just go ahead and we're all set up? Is it okay if we just do the show here? So that's what he did. And, what was supposed to be a short in-store because he'd have to, bust a move out to Oak Hill, he didn't have to do that. And then he stayed around and signed autographs for 3 or 4 hours because people that hadn't even come to the event heard he was there and he was staying, and it just, it went on all night long, and it was just incredible.
Wow.
But that's just one.
That's
just
one.
2.
Yeah, 2.
But, so many, great Austin people going back to, folks like Nancy Griffith and Lyle Lovett and, just fabulous Thunderbirds and just so many, from years ago and so many from, today.
Right.
But in terms of big names, some of my favorites have been, Richie Havens meant the world to me, just kind of like as someone that, never got to see him live ever,
right.
but saw him so many times opening up Woodstock.
Right. Yeah.
That meant a lot. And Ben Harper had one of the most incredible in-stores ever. We only had about 20 people, and we had to winnow it down to where it was only 20 people because he spends so much time visiting with each person when he signs autographs. You're in his world.
Yeah.
And no one else exists for, 10 minutes or something of that sort. But all of a sudden, that's 2 hours when it's 20 people.
Right.
So, gosh, it just, the Bulgarian women's choir, that was phenomenal. All these bouzouki players down in front of the stage and 21 Bulgarian women singing in harmony was just like, wow.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Do you have any recollections of Waterloo in stores that you've seen? That I met you at the Shiny Ribs one, Trey, right?
Yeah, I've been to a handful.
You've been to a handful?
Yeah.
Any ones that stand out to you, Caren?
I loved seeing local natives recently, and also learning that was like their only in-store they were doing. They flew in, they're an LA-based band, and came to Austin because Waterloo had been so good to them over the years. I saw them in a park in London after they played Glastonbury in 2010. A friend of mine, I was working in London at the time, he's like, you gotta come, there's this band busking, you gotta come hear them. And just had such a beautiful memory of that. And then to see them playing Waterloo so joyfully, and just like that store, not in their hometown, mattered so much that they would come play. It was so special.
Yeah. I have a funny story. You're going to know what I'm talking about, but I have a band with Kathy Valentine, or had one when she lived here. And after the pandemic, I want to say it might have been 2022 or something, we met at 24 Diner for lunch. We went over to Amy's and had some ice cream. And then she was like, let's go say hey to John. So we come walking around the corner, and you're there talking to an elderly gentleman with long hair. And I'm going to say this on the record. I think I might have said on my show before. This gentleman had the most amazing calves. So Kathy goes, oh, wait, he's talking to someone. And I said, that person has amazing calves. And she goes, dude, it's Robert Plant. And I was like, let's go say hi. She goes, no, that's so uncool. Let's just stand here and wait for him to leave, and then we'll just go up to talk to John like we were before. But we were like 4 feet from you guys, and you were looking at us like, hey. We were like, just waiting for him to leave. Like he had done something wrong to us or something. But what I was going to say was, you guys obviously have some kind of relationship. He did live here.
Right.
But he's a fan of Waterloo. Like those people come, like the guy from Led Zeppelin when he comes to town, wears shorts and goes to Waterloo and hangs out and talks to you?
Well, now I want to know what gym Robert Plant goes to.
Maybe he's one of those guys that jogs backwards. Have you guys heard that? That when you jog backwards, he gives you amazing calves? That's a different podcast. But there have been...
yeah, I mean, Robert hit several stores in town, but yeah, the last time he came through with Alison Krauss.
Right, they did the Waterloo Amphitheater.
Right.
Yeah, that's when we saw you.
That was
Yeah.
great. Yep, that was such a great show. And but I knew he was probably going to pop in the next day, and sure enough, he did. And it was great catching up.
Yeah.
And he really
Great
misses
catching up.
Austin.
I'm like, it's Led
Yeah.
Zeppelin. You say it so casually, like free French fries for everyone.
It's interesting because, John, you're such a music fan that, like, the Bulgarian Women's Orchestra and Robert Plant are just kind of like the same thing to you. When some people, like, one outweighs the other, but it doesn't. That's a beautiful trait that you have.
Well, also one of the things that is really incredible for me about in-stores is even if it's not music that, there's so much music that really, moves me and speaks to me, and it's part of my soul, but there's also music that, like, it's okay, like that. But if it means that much to the people that are there, that energy and that connection between them and the people making that music, that becomes my adrenaline mover, that just like, I got to help make these people get together, and they're experiencing something they weren't going to experience otherwise, and maybe in their lifetime, and it's happening right here, and it's because of me and this incredible crew and this incredible place, and that's really, I don't know, that's what drives me.
Yeah, you're a fan.
I'm a fan.
Like, you're a real, like, I don't think anybody doubts that you're a music fan at all. Like, obviously you followed your passion, and record stores were a thing. Like, it is a thing. Alejandro Escovedo,
Yeah.
was he the best employee you ever had? Be honest with me.
He tells everybody that.
I know.
But
He told me that.
I have a story I love to tell people that think, oh yeah, musicians, they're just they have this great life. They just get paid all this money for working 1 hour a night, or something of that sort. But Alejandro came to me, and I want to say even Lewis he had, kind of busted up with True Believers,
Yeah.
which actually Lewis and I helped finance the making of that record.
I read that, yeah.
Yeah, and but and he came and he was looking for a job, and I already had several musicians that were working at the store at that time, and I also just said, Al, we're friends, and it could be awkward, and I was just looking for some other reason, and I said, and besides, usually everybody that works here has had some experience, on the retail side of music, and I just not right now. And so then he went and got a job at Sound Warehouse, just like 5 blocks down the street, which is now where Whole Earth is. Mm-hmm. And we started getting these phone calls saying, hey, do you guys have such and such a record? And we go, yeah, we do. And he goes, oh, well, hey, this is Al down at Sound Warehouse, and we don't have it, and I knew you guys would, so I'm going to send Bob. He's going to be coming down there, and he'll be there in 5 minutes. And we started getting these phone calls all the time. And 2 years later, Al walks in with a resume and said, hey, John, I've got experience now. Can I have a job? So
That's awesome.
No employee I've ever had has done that to get a job.
Yeah. When I was talking to another one of your former employees, Kyle Crusham, who now works with Paul Simon's co-producer on that last record and everything, he was saying today that one of the things that he got out of that was the world of music that he was introduced to. And he was like, do you know what I'm talking about? And I was like, yeah, in the 90s, that's where I used to go get my Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan records. It was. I used to go to Waterloo to get them.
Right. Well, we built an entire program around Waterloo Recommends.
Yeah.
And, right. And the very first Waterloo Recommends record was Paul Simon's, here I am blanking on the name of it.
The new one?
No, the big one.
Oh, Graceland.
Graceland,
Yeah,
of course, right.
very famous.
And, you know, that was our first one, and it was, you know, with Ladysmith Black Mambazo, and,
Yeah.
you know, and talk about opening up a world for a lot of people. We had been selling a whole lot of Ladysmith Black Mambazo prior to that, between myself and John Ailey at KUT.
Yeah.
But Paul Simon just, you know, turned the whole world on to that band. And,
Yeah.
you know, incredible.
That's so amazing. Speaking of you guys were talking about Napster earlier. You lived through, or Waterloo has survived a couple of different things. I was in a band. My band was signed to Lars Ulrich's label in 1998, and our first record came out in the summer of 2000. I believe it was the Tuesday after the Friday that he delivered the names. So it was just was a very tense time around that camp, you know, obviously. But there was something he was trying to say at that time, like, hey, like we got to figure out a way to regulate this for us, or it's not gonna work out. So I was reading in there that 2005 was the biggest selling year of
Right.
Okay.
The highest sales volume.
Highest
yeah.
sales volume. So that's
Right.
after Napster,
Right.
and it's weird.
Well,
because they kept selling.
So from 82 until 1999, 2000, our sales were always on a trajectory heading up, and
Like the industry.
like the industry. Right. I mean, and then 2000, 2001, after Napster had come along, and of course there was also 9/11, but for 5 years, myself and the other surviving record store people, and we had already started our coalition of independent music stores,
Right.
which we're celebrating our 30th anniversary this year in a month in
Congratulations.
New Orleans. Yeah, but anyway. We were all very fond if we were not falling, because every other store was falling.
Correct. Like the Tower Records and Virgin
Right.
Mega Stores.
Exactly,
And,
right. So if you were holding steady,
Yeah.
if your sales were flat, we were all going around saying, flat is the new up.
Yeah.
And so for 5 years, we were up because we were flat.
Right.
And I think some years between 2000 and 2005, our sales were up, you know, 0.5%, and then the next year they'd be down 0.5%, and then up 1/4% or something. But the best year ever, with it, you know, being up 0.6%
Right.
or something,
Yeah.
was 2005.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was just a crazy time, and that's when 90% of the places that sold music either went out of business, stopped selling music, or like if it was a Walmart or a Target or something, they reduced their
Yeah.
footprint to, you know, nothing.
Yeah. Do you guys find that vinyl was part of what was able to bring that back up, at least sales wise, and keep places like Waterloo open? I mean, because I know you guys are, at least when I was dealing with you with Awesome Music Foundation, or A&R was dealing with you guys, it was extremely busy.
Yeah. Well, I found it's interesting as you're telling these anecdotes about Napster, et cetera. I remember when I was in college and using, you know, the services, it was finding all these indie artists that I'd be downloading a popular song or something, and then you find like, oh, Dispatch, who's this band? I don't know this band, and then you end up buying the CD or like becoming a fan of it. And what I started to see happening in the mid 2010s, 2015 was all these indie artists starting to sell merch because they were finding fan bases thanks to streaming, and people were seeking them out. And things like Record Store Day, which John has been a huge part of, as one of the founding members of the Coalition of Independent Music Stores, really starting to have an impact on music fans that were looking for discovery and not just things, you know, being sent their way. And what does it say about you as a music fan that you own music and you're buying it and you're choosing this instead of just following, you know, what the mainstream is telling you to do? And so the economic utility for artists, also the money they make off vinyl, was a big part of it. You had the fans demanding, ownership and wanting to say something about themselves with the music they were choosing to buy, and then also artists going, "Hey, this is money in my pocket right now that I need to pay for gasoline to get to the next show, and I'm waiting on my Spotify check for 6 months."
Right.
And those things in combination, I think, started, between the stores, the artists' need and the fans' demand, started seeing vinyl, carry these record stores.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, your vinyl section got really big over the last 15 years.
Oh yeah, definitely. And it was us indie stores that got them to realize they just needed to make a small pressing of records,
Correct.
because this was back at a time when all the big chains and Amazon and so forth were getting an extra exclusive track on their
Right,
on
of
their
course.
CD.
Sure.
And so there might be 10 songs that didn't make the album, that 10 different companies were getting that exclusive track.
Right.
And we just kept, and indie stores weren't getting anything, and we just said, can't you just make 1,000 records?
Yeah.
That's what our customers want.
Yeah.
That's what the people working here want.
Yeah.
And a few of them finally did, and immediately sold through it.
Yeah.
And we're like, well, couldn't you have made 1,500? And the numbers just kept kind of going up and up and up.
Yeah.
And there was a really weird period where the pressing plants couldn't keep up.
Right.
And
There was a fire at the. Yeah, there's a bunch of big backup.
2020
Yeah,
was
right.
a tough year for
Tough
the vinyl
year.
industry.
Right,
Yeah.
right, yep. But it's been great as far as getting today's young generation to really listen to and appreciate everything that those songwriters, those musicians, artists are trying to convey, as opposed to it being something that's just a track.
Yeah.
It's disposable,
Correct.
and it's background music or something of that sort, as opposed to really sitting down.
Piece of art.
Right.
Yeah,
Mhm.
experiencing.
And I think that's where Trey and I initially really connected, as we were thinking about the music economy and experiences, was Trey's background with memorabilia and collectibles, and
Yeah.
saying, and I think one thing the music industry is getting better at is realizing not all fans are created equal, that
No.
some are just going to stream, and that's totally fine,
Yeah.
but there are people who want these better experiences, elevated experiences, indie exclusive experiences. And we looked at what we could do with Waterloo to say, hey, let's show people behind the curtain how it's made, but also offer what Trey often calls these elevated experiences. Give people collectible memorabilia if they want that, but
Yeah.
also just a starter, you might just be getting the used vinyl or used CD. And how do you encourage people in their music journey and also help artists in between?
It seems like a lot of that too has been introduced to the public through these, like the festival culture that has emerged in the United States over the last 20 years or 25 years, where those kind of unique experiences are what people are going for, not just to see, Metallica or something, Like there's a whole experience that's going to happen. Good thinking. All of you guys. Hey, did we have some questions? I think I saw some come up. I was so engaged. I love talking to you guys.
We got a few people in the chat. We have Tucker Livingston, and then we have Dave Pruitt saying what's up. And then we do have one question, and the question is exactly how many Bob Schneider records have you all sold?
Good question. If you knew the exact number, I'd be blown away.
I do not know the exact number, but I do know that Bob and all of his bands has sold more records than any other artist in our store.
Wow. That's a lot.
That's a whole lot.
That was a question
think
from
there's-
Bob.
I think there's
It might have been.
I think there's a magnet or a postcard in the store that says that. I was
Oh, really?
perusing the other day and
Right,
was
right,
like,
yeah.
I learned a
Well,
new trivia fact myself.
For our 40th anniversary, I asked Bob to, kind of create some art for us.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was our, just kind of a 40th anniversary postcard that we did. And I wrote that liner note, but
Did
it's
you?
but
Okay.
it's true. But I mean, but it was really during. I mean, originally Lonely Land was just a self-produced.
Yeah. And he only
Deal.
sold it at your store, right? Wasn't it an exclusive at first?
There's been several people that wanted to just do it exclusively, but I mean, I'm buds with the record store owners
Sure,
around
sure.
town, and I was always just like, there's fans that only
Right,
go
right.
to their store. They
Right.
don't come here. So, you don't want to be, depriving your fans that aren't shopping at my
Yeah.
store to not be able to find their favorite thing at their favorite stores.
Right.
So anyway, but Bob would come in with a two-wheeler with CD boxes to, put them on consignment with us. And sometime he had Sandra Bullock helping,
Yeah.
back when they were dating. And but it was crazy. I think we had sold over 10,000 of those before it was picked up by Universal. And then it was the longest time before Universal caught up and sold another 10,000 at our
Right.
store. But by that time, it was all over the country. So we had competition at that point.
Yeah.
Besides just other stores in Austin.
Yeah, can I ask you guys a quick question, just a personal thing? Each of you, what do you remember, Trey? What the first music you bought with your own money was? Was it a record? Mine was a single. I'm 56, and I bought Kung Fu Fighting by Carl Douglas because I was a boy and it had kung fu and rock in it. So, sold. What was yours?
I honestly think it was a CD, and it was Guns N' Roses' Appetite for
Oh,
Destruction.
sweet. I remember the first time I heard that record. Okay, Caren?
Mine was Weezer Blue Album on cassette.
Oh,
at
nice.
Best Buy. Yeah.
And I'm older than all of y'all.
Yeah.
It was Big Bad John, Jimmy Dean,
Okay.
and Goodbye Cruel World, and I'm forgetting the artist's name. There were two different Goodbye Cruel Worlds. There was a Goodbye Cruel World, I'm off to join the circus, and
All
I'm
right.
off to join the service.
Oh.
And it was to join the circus.
Wow, do you still have them by chance?
Yeah.
No. You do? I lost mine.
It's funny for me. I do have a very specific memory about the first time I actually played music. So my dad had a vinyl collection, and I remember being addicted to Charlie Daniels' Devil Went Down to Georgia
Oh,
because
yeah.
it said a bad word, son of a bitch.
Yeah.
And I would just play that because I thought it was cool.
I told you once, you son of a bitch, I'm the best as ever been. What about you? Do you have any early listening memories?
I'll tell you, I have a very formative memory, which was my first in-store. My dad walked me across the street from his office to the Tower Records in my hometown to see Foo Fighters perform Color and Shape, and I was like, I have access to this band? Like, it was like I couldn't believe that a band like that would play an in-store. And my first vinyl experience was so silly. It was a Flexi-Disc on the back of a Cookie Crisp cereal box.
Oh, yeah.
It was the Ghostbusters 7-inch, and you could cut it out. And I'm a very strong-willed child and still adult, and my parents were like, we should cut this out for you. And I was like, no, I want to do it. And they're like, well, if you cut into the grooves, that's on you. And I did. I cut right into the grooves, and I played it, and it wouldn't play the intro. And my parents were like, well, that's a lesson. That's a lesson for you. So, yeah, kids used to be able to get vinyl on the back of a cereal box.
Did you say that the Foo Fighters was your first show?
First in-store.
First in-store.
Not first show, but yeah, first in-store. And that's why when I go to Waterloo and I see, I get really teary. John will tell me, like, oh, there's a band that's coming. It's a lot of young girls coming. But when I see really young women at Waterloo with their parents, it makes me choke up because I'm like, for me, that was the entry point for a lot of music. Was,
Yeah.
wow, this is just in my neighborhood record store. My dad and I are forming these memories together.
Yeah. I had a young mom, and it was like music was important to her and to my aunts. Like I was raised by people where like a new record, like they bought it the day that it came, like, and someone called every 5 minutes in the morning or went and slept overnight to get tickets to the Paul McCartney Wings Over America thing or something.
I have so many memories of waiting on hold with Ticketmaster. My dad's on one phone, I'm on the other, and we're trying to get the same. It was a family activity to be
Yeah. musical.
Oh, for me.
Hold on, really quickly before I forget, because this is really important. The Prince Black album, when it finally was up for sale, I went and bought it at Waterloo. Go ahead. I remember that.
That was a pretty great day.
Yeah.
Yep. Anyway, my first live music experience was at my Czech family reunions with Central Texas polka bands.
Oh, nice.
And all my relatives polka-ing around the SPJST halls. And then that was, from the time I was like 2 or 3. And then from starting about the time I was 5 until probably about I was 10, I want to say that the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo had Dale Evans and Roy Rogers every year.
Oh, yeah.
And so that was so great, hearing them sing Happy Trails in person.
Yeah. You got any live music memories that you'd like to share, Trey?
I saw MC Hammer at Joe and Harry Freeman Coliseum at the rodeo.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, they started getting diverse at about that time, which was more than country, but those were my 16-year-old able to drive, go to the rodeo by myself with a friend. And
It's funny that you say that, because I remember when all of a sudden, like, the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, one night it was like Kool and the Gang, and like the next night it was Miami Sound Machine. And you're like,
Right.
okay, things are changing up here. It's not just the Oak Ridge Boys anymore.
Exactly, yeah.
Elvis played the Houston Livestock Show and Radio the year that he died, or the year before he died. Yeah, my aunt went to it. Pretty amazing.
We got another question here
Okay.
from Polly Powell. What was the first in-store at Waterloo? The first ever in-store?
Good question. I want to say Lewis had done some before me, but
Zeitgeist? I'm just guessing.
no,
I'm just throwing names
no,
out.
we
Even
weren't.
before.
One of the first one when I
Yeah.
had become a partner was with Arthur Brown.
Oh, awesome.
And Arthur also made a music video for that release, and that was really incredible.
Oh, really?
But yeah, that was the first, and that happened shortly after Lewis and I had partnered up. But I want to say I know he had done some prior to that, but I never went to those, and I'm not certain who all that was.
Ah.
I want to ask, since you brought up the ones you didn't go to, what's
Go
the
ahead.
show? What's the in-store you missed that you regret missing?
The one that I regret the most is Nirvana. I was on vacation when they came through and did their one in store at Waterloo, right after Nevermind had come out.
Sorry
Brutal.
to bring
You know,
that up.
you leave this town, you're always going to miss something great.
Look, that happened to me in Houston. Anar, who you know from Awesome Music, we've been friends for many, many years. And I went and played. Moved here in '91, or moved back here in '91, and I went back to Houston to play the Westheimer Arts Festival or something with a guy that Anar played with. We did it together, and we all went to eat afterwards. And Anar was like, "Hey, you want to come see this band? Like, we're all on the list to go see this band that's on tour right now, and they're playing at the Vatican in Houston." And I said, "No, man, I got to work tomorrow at like 3. I got to go back to Austin." And that was Nirvana. And there was like, I want to say like beginning of, like 2 weeks or something. You know, I'm talking about like that weird period before they were super famous, but the
Right.
record was out. It's a short period of time.
Yeah. Another one that, was really tough for me to miss was when when John Prine came and did like an interview with KUT from our stage.
Oh, awesome.
And I'd been working on trying to get John for decades, and then it finally happened, and when he came through, we had a vacation planned, and we were out of town, so...
And then we also got, do y'all remember the Austin Aqua Fest in the 80s?
Yeah.
Mecca Cat asked about that one. Why don't you guys reminisce on that a little bit? The Aqua Fest.
I mean, was it on Wednesdays, or was it over the weekends?
No,
Is that
it
the one
was-
that was on weekends?
I remember it being 1 week, but with kind of like 2 weekends bookending it.
Yeah, yeah.
And back in the early days, it was really cool, in my opinion, because they had different themed nights, and the food was always different. So it would, there would be Mexican night, and then Czech night, and then German night, and just on and on and on. But then it all became the same sausage on a stick.
Right, of course. Just with a different sauce on it.
Exactly. Right. But I mean, it was, like really, they would have, the church that had the old Czech ladies come and make kolaches, and they would be for sale that night. And then the next night it would be, German people from, some German Lutheran church that would come and be making all these German dishes.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then the music was, generally tied to that, but then the music started becoming more and more popular music as opposed to ethnic music or
Right.
whatever.
Beto y los Fairlanes.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Right.
I remember that. For some reason, I equate them with the Aquafest.
Well, it just got so huge, but the thing that got weird was the people that were all the volunteers started just, I don't know,
Partying too much.
partying too much,
Yeah, that happens.
and also just kind of access became this really weird thing.
Sure.
Yep. But anyway, it was
The old
it was-
Aquafest.
it was- the old Aquafest was great, and but that's also when they would have like speedboat races down.
Right.
Town Lake.
I think that stuff was like more 80s, and when I lived here in the 80s, I don't really remember it, like doing the Aquafest.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to ask you guys as we're wrapping up here, what else should we know about the new Waterloo? First of all, it's going to be at 1105, is that right?
Right.
1105 North Lamar, so it's going to be up a few blocks
5 blocks north on the other side of the street.
on the other side of the
Third
street.
store, all of them on Lamar Boulevard.
I think the biggest thing that I take away from this entire process is, while John always speaks really highly of all the staff and their loyalty and interest in music and just their dedication because they can be making more money somewhere else, to hear that, okay, that's cool, but then to be ingrained in the store and really get to know these people has been a really special process. It's like just like everybody probably says, you automatically have this adopted family that will really do anything for you because we all love music and expect to see a lot of that same culture, a lot of that customer service, a lot of that music encyclopedia that so many of these people that work there have.
Yeah.
And just willing to bend over backwards to help people find something. It's just been a really cool, I don't know, it's supernatural a little bit to me.
And you guys are able to keep the staff, right?
We're keeping
That's one of
pretty
the
much every,
huge.
I don't know, I
Every
don't mean pretty
person's
much.
going forward.
Everyone's going forward. And with all the added kind of assets that we're creating and engaging in programming, I mean, really almost everybody gets to kind of have a pick of the litter of, do you want to do something different? Do you want to have a podcast? Do you want to staff events? So we're expanding the offering that Waterloo is, and I think the staff is so perfectly cultivated and ready to be able to expand their world outside of what they've known. I mean, some people have been there for 40 years and some for 20, and it's just a remarkable loyalty that I've never seen before. And to be in the middle of that and then give them these nuggets and things that the excitement of, we bought a red van and and that's going to drive around Austin just with logos, and the excitement of the team of just, that's really cool and that's really fun. Can I drive it? Can I take it to do this?
That's so awesome.
Just little things like that that just add to the flavor of Waterloo, but the staff's excitement behind this whole thing has been, while expected, unexpected.
And if that doesn't prove I found the right new partners,
Yeah.
that
You did.
they get that,
Yeah.
So a lot of people, question, you can't do this. You have to keep doing it forever. It's like, no.
No,
I've been
do
selling
some other
records in
stuff.
Austin for over 50 years,
Yeah, and
and
it's not like
43
you're
of those at Waterloo.
Right.
so-
And it's not like you're going to, like, no one's ever going to see you again.
No, I'm
there.
not going away.
I mean, I see you half the
They're
times I
probably
go
going
out.
to want to toss me out. But
Yeah.
But expect to see really cool new things that
Yes.
the existing staff are doing that you really haven't seen before, all under one roof.
I'm very excited about that. So that's going to be in August. Karen, is there anything else?
No, I think it's just the trust that Kathy and John have put into me and Trey, and that the staff were earning their trust with these opportunities, and hopefully the community too. This was a really scary kind of thing to take on. Austin loves Waterloo. The music industry loves Waterloo.
Yeah.
I was just in LA, and the amount of people that want to talk to me about Waterloo is insane. You're like, you know that store, and people have memories of it. And for us to be trusted with this and to be working with John and Kathy and the staff is just incredible. And we can't wait to welcome all of Austin and beyond to the new Waterloo 3.0.
Well, man, congratulations to all of you, and thank you to all of you, because that is a very special place. As a musician here in Austin, it means the world to me. I know to my community it does. I'm so glad you're still going to be involved in some way. And Caren, ever since I met you at Gold Rush, there's a groundedness and authoritativeness without being in any way overbearing. You're very strong person.
Thank you for saying
and
that.
just meeting you twice, I get that from you too, Trey. So I look forward to going to the new Waterloo. Thank you guys so much for doing this very first video episode, the pilot video episode. And
We'll have to do it again in our podcast studio.
oh yeah, I would
yes,
love
we
to.
didn't talk about that. Yes.
No, you did. Well,
have
you
a new
kind of brushed
podcast
by it, and I was like,
studio.
oh no, now we're going to be like more
No.
creating
You
more
can be the
competition.
first invited guest.
Yes.
Oh, well,
we
thank
will.
you very much.
As a host.
Well, thank you very much. I would love
You're
to
welcome.
do that. Well, thank you guys so much. Waterloo Records lives on and grows and thrives. Thank you guys so much for doing the show. Thank you guys. Thank you to Purple Bee for hosting this show tonight and presenting it to all you guys. It's been a great, great experience. So, hey, have a great week. That's 1501. Mwah. Thanks for watching.